The galaxy was dying. Once teeming with thriving civilizations, vibrant cultures, and advanced technologies, it was now a shadow of its former self. The void had come. Its presence was like a slow-moving tide, swallowing planets, stars, and entire star systems. No one knew exactly what the void was, a mindless force of entropy, a malicious intelligence, or something worse still. But its effect was undeniable. Stars were fading, life was vanishing, and hope had become an increasingly rare commodity. On Earth, the once thriving blue and green planet was now a fractured remnant of its former glory. The mighty cities of humanity's past lay in ruins, a few scattered survivors clinging to life in hidden bunkers or makeshift colonies. The very air was tinged with ash and the bitter scent of burned remnants. Humanity had fought back, but the relentless, invisible hand of the void had proven too strong. What remained of Earth's population had retreated to the underground, hiding from the unrelenting chaos above. But amidst this seemingly hopeless situation, a faint signal was detected, weak, nearly imperceptible, but unmistakably human in origin. It was an encrypted transmission, barely a whisper in the void of space. The coordinates traced back to a forgotten corner of the galaxy. Dr. Leela Sampson, a lead scientist at the United Earth Defense's makeshift command center, stared at the monitor in disbelief. Her tired eyes scanned the data again, refusing to let the possibility sink in. She'd been through too much loss already, too many years watching her world collapse. But this was different. "Is this real?" she muttered, more to herself than to her colleagues. "Yes, ma'am," came the voice of Lieutenant Marcus Reyes, a young communications officer. His eyes were wide with a mix of awe and uncertainty. "We've cross-checked the transmission. It's human-made, possibly old, but it's definitely from Earth. The signal's weak, but it's consistent. And it's not random. It's a message." A chill ran down Dr. Sampson's spine. Could this be the breakthrough they so desperately needed? Could there be someone, out there that had found a way to fight back against the void? "Prepare the data for transmission to command," she ordered, her voice now steady, a spark of hope igniting deep within her. "We need to follow this lead. The galaxy may be falling apart, but this might be the key to turning it around." Across the command center, the last remnants of Earth's military and scientific forces had gathered, led by General Charles Hawk, a grizzled veteran of countless battles who had seen more than his fair share of loss. He approached Dr. Sampson, his eyes fixed on the data screen. "You're sure about this?" he asked quietly, a mixture of skepticism and hope in his tone. "We've chased ghosts before. This could be just another dead end." Dr. Sampson didn't answer immediately. Instead, she examined the faint signals on the screen again. It was a long shot, but the desperation they felt on Earth was suffocating. They couldn't afford to ignore it. "This is not a ghost, General," she replied with quiet conviction. "This is the last chance. We're going after it." A moment of silence passed between them. General Hawk glanced out the window at the lifeless, darkened sky. No stars to guide them, no glimmer of hope beyond the looming terror of the void. Then, without a word, he turned back to Dr. Sampson. "Then let's not waste time. Prepare the fleet." As the words left his mouth, the small team of soldiers, scientists, and engineers scrambled into action. Earth's final hope had just been ignited. A signal, barely a flicker, had come from the darkness of space, and they would follow it, no matter the cost. The mission was clear: trace the signal's origin and find what lay at the end. If this was truly humanity's last chance to fight back, they would seize it. If not, Earth would become one more lost memory in the galaxy's decaying history. The Endurance, Earth's last operational warship, sat silent in the vast expanse of space. Its sleek, jagged hull gleamed in the dim light of a distant star, but there was no time to marvel at its design. Its mission was all-consuming: track the faint signal from beyond known space, and if possible, uncover the key to Earth's survival. The ship was the only vessel capable of undertaking such a perilous journey. The rest of Earth's remaining fleet had been decimated by the Void's advance, leaving the Endurance as Earth's solitary hope. Captain Sarah Owens stood at the helm, her hands steady on the controls as her dark eyes focused on the trajectory map in front of her. Her face, weathered by countless battles, betrayed no hint of doubt. She had led missions into the heart of enemy territories, fought off alien invaders, and even survived the collapse of entire civilizations. But this was different. The fate of Earth itself rested on the success of this mission. Ready for jump, Captain, Lieutenant Race's voice crackled through the comms. He was on the bridge, coordinating the navigation team, but Owens could tell by the tone in his voice that the tension was palpable. Everyone aboard was keenly aware of the stakes. "Proceed," she ordered. "Full speed ahead. Let's see where this signal leads." The engines hummed with a low, resonant growl as the Endurance surged forward, its FTL drive kicking into gear. In an instant, the ship was streaking across the stars, hurtling toward the unknown. As the ship sailed through the fabric of space-time, Owens allowed herself a brief moment to reflect on the fragility of their situation. The void between Earth and this unknown signal was vast, and no one knew if they were walking into a trap, a dead end, or perhaps something far worse. The journey was long, the silence around them profound. The crew, a mix of battle-hardened soldiers and brilliant scientists, kept to their posts. The mood on the bridge was somber, the quiet buzz of machinery, the only sound breaking the stillness. Owens scanned the monitors, noting the erratic energy fluctuations and anomalies as they entered a region of space that seemed wrong. "This area of space doesn't match anything we've mapped before," said Dr. Leela Sampson, the lead scientist on board, her voice betraying a hint of unease. She stood beside Owens, eyes locked on the readouts. "We're getting a lot of strange readings. It's like we're being pulled in different directions." Owens nodded, her eyes narrowing as she studied the data. The signal was still weak, a mere whisper, but it was growing clearer with each passing moment. "Stay sharp, everyone. Whatever we're walking into, we need to be ready for anything." The ship's exterior lighting flickered as an unnatural pulse of energy emanated from deep within the unknown system. The crew froze, the hairs on the back of their necks standing on end. Reyes looked up from his console, face grim. "We've got company," he muttered, barely audible. Before Owens could react, the Endurance was rocked by a series of impacts, alarms blaring as the ship's shields began to buckle. A massive shadow loomed overhead, an enemy fleet, its dark silhouettes barely visible against the backdrop of stars. It was a coalition of scavenger ships, vessels once part of fallen civilizations, now turned marauders. Their insignias were a patchwork of ancient empires, all serving one single cause: to survive at any cost. "Weapon systems online, Captain," shouted Lieutenant Reyes. "They're closing fast, but they're not firing yet." "They're testing us," Owens growled, instinctively taking command of the situation. She knew these kinds of pirates, ruthless opportunists, often striking first and asking questions later. Their weakness was their arrogance. They assumed anyone this deep into void territory was a simple target. They'd be wrong. "Prepare to return fire, but don't engage unless necessary," she ordered. "Let's see how far they're willing to push us." The ship's shields flared up, glowing a vibrant blue as another wave of impacts battered them from all directions. The crew steadied themselves, adrenaline coursing through their veins. Owens remained calm, her hands gripping the armrests of her chair as the chaos unfolded around her. "Captain," Dr. Sampson said, her voice tense. "The signal, it's coming from that large derelict station just ahead. If we don't move now, we'll never make it there." Owens didn't hesitate. The pirates were an obstacle, but the true objective was clear. "All hands, brace for evasive maneuvers. Reyes, lock in a course for the station. Get us there now." As the Endurance veered toward the derelict station, the pirate ships pursued with ferocity. The distant echo of weapons fire reverberated across the cold expanse of space, but Owen's focus was unyielding. There was something in that signal, something that could be the spark they needed to reignite hope, and she wasn't going to let anyone stand in their way. "Full speed ahead," she muttered, locking her gaze on the station ahead. "Let's see if this flicker of hope can burn bright enough to light the way." The Endurance tore through the empty void, its engines firing in short bursts as it weaved between pirate vessels. Each evasive maneuver was more desperate than the last, and the crew fought the surge of adrenaline that pushed them to the edge of exhaustion. The derelict station loomed ahead, its massive structure barely held together by rusted metal and the skeletal remains of what had once been a thriving hub of intergalactic commerce. Time had not been kind to the station, but its signal was unmistakable. "We're almost there," Lieutenant Rice shouted, his voice strained as he gripped the controls, expertly avoiding a barrage of plasma bolts from the pirates. The distant rumble of weapons fire reverberated through the hull as the Endurance accelerated toward the station's massive docking ports. "Prepare for impact," Owens barked, her voice unwavering as she stood, ready to take command the moment they made contact with the station. "All hands, brace for docking procedure. This station is ancient, and we don't know what kind of structural integrity we're dealing with." The ship rocked violently as another round of laser fire struck their aft shields. The Endurance lurched forward, its nose pointing toward the derelict station, which now loomed large in the viewport. "Docking clamps engaged," Rice reported. "We're in. No signs of incoming fire from the pirates." "Get us inside now," Owens ordered, and the ship's thrusters fired, slowing their approach. The massive hollowed-out station loomed over them, a twisted labyrinth of decaying corridors and forgotten memories. The signal had come from here, but the question remained: why, who, or what had sent it? The moment the Endurance docked, the crew swiftly moved into action. The airlock hissed open, and the bridge crew was the first to disembark, armed and prepared for whatever awaited them. Captain Owens, Dr. Sampson, and a small team of soldiers exited into the dark, rusting corridors of the station. The low hum of ancient machinery resonated through the station's forgotten halls. "This place is a graveyard," one of the soldiers muttered, his voice barely a whisper as his flashlight swept over the damaged walls. "What happened here?" "It's older than any station we've seen," Dr. Sampson said, her voice tinged with awe as she studied the forgotten technology. "This is pre-void tech, perhaps older than Earth's first colonies." As they moved deeper into the station, the strange feeling of being watched lingered in the air. Shadows danced in the corners of their vision, but nothing appeared. The station was dead, its former inhabitants long gone, yet something felt alive here, something hidden beneath layers of neglect. "The signal is stronger now," Dr. Sampson said, her voice edged with excitement. "We're getting closer." The group continued forward, passing through massive chambers filled with ancient control panels and storage units long abandoned. At the center of the station, they found it, a towering cylindrical structure, its surface covered in intricate alien symbols that seemed to glow faintly in the dark. "It's a control center," Owen said, her voice echoing through the chamber. "But what is it controlling?" "We need to access it," Dr. Sampson said, stepping forward. She connected a data pad to the interface, and the console lit up with activity, the alien symbols flickering as the machine hummed to life. For a brief moment, the station seemed to wake from its long slumber. A low, mechanical voice echoed through the chamber, sending a shiver down Owen's spine. "Authorization required. Access granted. Data transfer initiating." "What in the void is that?" one of the soldiers asked, eyes wide. "Keep it together," Owens ordered, her hand steady on her weapon. "We don't know what we're dealing with, but we need answers. Stay alert." The station's walls hummed louder, and then, as if answering their unspoken questions, a projection flickered to life in front of them. A hologram appeared, depicting a humanoid figure, tall, angular, and unmistakably alien. Its eyes glowed with a strange, otherworldly light. The eerie siren reverberated throughout the station, its wail cutting through the silence like a jagged blade. Captain Owens instinctively reached for her sidearm, her grip tightening around the cold metal as the shadows in the chamber seemed to deepen. The hologram flickered again, its alien face shifting into a distorted mask of urgency. The words it had spoken replayed in their minds, lingering like a warning too ominous to ignore. "You seek the spark of life, but be warned." As the hologram flickered out, the lights in the control room flickered along with it, plunging them into near-complete darkness. Only the faint glow from their flashlights and the hum of the station's failing systems provided any illumination. "Move!" Owens shouted, breaking the stillness. She gestured to the crew, motioning for them to stay close. "We need to get back to the Endurance." "No." But as the team made their way toward the station's exit, something changed. The air felt heavier, like a pressure was building, pushing against them from all sides. The distant sound of mechanical whirring, like a great machine coming to life, echoed through the long, abandoned hallways. Dr. Sampson looked back at the flickering projection one last time, her brow furrowed with confusion and curiosity. "This is all wrong. The custodian, the Ember, why warn us if the signal was meant for us?" Before anyone could answer, the floor beneath them trembled. Owens froze, her instincts screaming at her to take cover, but it was too late. The walls groaned and buckled, and suddenly massive steel doors slammed down, sealing off their only exit. The team scrambled to assess their new predicament, weapons raised and ready. They had no choice but to move deeper into the station, even though the feeling of being watched only intensified with every step. "The exit is sealed," Reyes reported, his voice tight with panic. "We're trapped." Owen's mind raced. There had to be another way out. There always was. She glanced at the map display, searching for any alternative routes. That's when she saw it, a small hidden tunnel system just beneath the station's main corridors. It wasn't marked on any map, but its faint energy signature was still detectable. "That's our way out," Owen said, motioning for her crew to follow. "This way." As they moved toward the tunnel, the entire station groaned again, louder this time, as if something massive was awakening from a long, dormant sleep. The walls shook, and the ground trembled beneath their boots. The sense of urgency intensified, and their steps quickened. The tunnel entrance was a hidden hatchway located behind a decaying wall panel. It was small, only wide enough for one person to pass through at a time, and the air inside was thick with dust and the smell of ancient machinery. Reyes went first, squeezing through the narrow passage and into the darkness beyond. The rest of the crew followed quickly, Owens bringing up the rear. The tunnel system twisted and turned like a forgotten vein, leading them deeper into the bowels of the station. As they moved further in, the low hum of the station grew louder, almost oppressive. Something was stirring in the depths of the forgotten station, a presence that seemed to stretch its fingers out toward them, as though sensing their every move. "We're getting closer," Dr. Sampson murmured, her voice tight with apprehension. "The Ember's signal, it's coming from deeper within." They pushed forward, finally reaching a small chamber at the heart of the station. The room was vast, far larger than any they'd encountered, and at its center was a massive structure that resembled a colossal vault. Its surface was covered in strange, swirling symbols that glowed faintly, similar to the markings on the custodian's projection. "It's here," Owens whispered. Her heart raced, her breath quickening as she approached the vault. She felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her, the uncertainty and the fear that lingered in her chest. The Ember was here, but what was it? What had it been protecting for so long? Suddenly, the lights in the room flared to life, casting everything in harsh, blinding light. The vault doors slowly began to open with a deep, grinding noise, revealing a pulsating core of pure white light. The presence, Once a distant whisper now felt suffocating, like a hand gripping their collective chest. "This is it," Dr. Sampson said, her voice trembling. "This is the last Ember." Before anyone could react, a sharp, mechanical sound echoed from the darkness, and the floor beneath them shook violently. From the shadows, something stirred, massive, armored figures, their silhouettes barely visible as they emerged from the depths of the vault. The crew stood frozen, weapons raised, but Owens knew, whatever these figures were, they weren't just guarding the Ember. They were a warning. The ground rumbled beneath their feet as the armored figures emerged from the shadows. The pale light of the vault cast harsh reflections on their metallic forms, making them appear like nightmarish statues come to life. Their movements were slow and deliberate, but there was a power in each step, an undeniable strength that made the air feel electric. Captain Owens held her breath, her hand steady on her weapon, but her mind raced. Who were these beings? Why were they guarding the Ember? And what had triggered their awakening? "They're not human," Reyes whispered, his voice barely audible. He was right. The figures were massive, taller than any human, their bodies encased in dark, angular armor that shimmered with strange energy. They moved with precision, as though guided by some unseen command. The lead figure raised its arm, and a loud mechanical hiss filled the air as a large, segmented visor slid up, revealing a pair of glowing eyes that shone with an unnatural, cold light. The figure's voice was deep, reverberating through the chamber like a thunderclap. "The last Ember is not for you," the voice boomed, its resonance shaking the walls. "It must remain protected. You will turn back now, or you will face annihilation." A chill ran down Owen's spine. The words were clear, authoritative, but they held a sense of finality, as if there were no room for negotiation. The Guardians, whatever they were, weren't going to let anyone near the Ember. "You can't stop us," Owen said, her voice steady despite the dread she felt building in her chest. "We came here for answers." The lead Guardian's eyes flickered, and for a moment, the air seemed to still. "The Ember holds the future of your kind," it said, its voice like an ancient echo. "Its power is beyond your comprehension. Those who seek to harness it will be consumed." Owen's mind raced. This was it. The Ember wasn't just a relic or a tool to be used. It was something more, something dangerous. She exchanged a quick glance with Dr. Sampson, whose expression mirrored her own confusion and growing concern. "What exactly do you want with it?" Dr. Sampson called out, her voice tinged with desperation. "We've come this far. You can't expect us to just leave without knowing why this is all happening." The lead Guardian's helmet lowered slightly, as if considering her words. It was then that the other armored figures stepped forward, their movements synchronized. They didn't seem to need to speak to communicate. There was an undeniable unity between them, as if they were bound by a single ancient purpose. "Knowledge is a poison to those unworthy of it," the lead Guardian replied, its voice now more chilling than ever. "The Ember must not be awakened, for it is the key to the void. Those who awaken it will be drawn into a cycle they cannot escape." The weight of the words hung heavy in the air. The void. The word echoed through Owen's mind, a stark reminder of everything she had heard about the endless, consuming darkness that had once devoured entire civilizations. "They're warning us," Dr. Sampson whispered, the horror in her voice unmistakable. "The Ember, it's not just a power source, it's something far worse." Reyes stepped forward, his stance defiant. "We've come too far to turn back now," he said, his voice unwavering. "Whatever this Ember is, we have to understand it. If we don't, the rest of the galaxy will fall before it." The lead Guardian's glowing eyes flared with intensity, and in a flash, it raised its weapon, a long, sleek staff that crackled with energy. The air around them shifted, the tension palpable as the Guardians took their positions, preparing for a confrontation. "The decision is not yours," the Guardian intoned, its voice now almost a growl. "You will not survive this." Before Owens could give an order, the Guardians lunged forward in perfect unison, their weapons raised. The air crackled with energy as the first blast fired from their staffs, illuminating the chamber in a blinding white light. The crew barely had time to react as they scrambled for cover, Owens pulling her team back into the shadowed recesses of the chamber. "Stay low. We need to get out of here," Owens shouted, adrenaline pumping through her veins. She turned to Dr. Sampson. "What are we dealing with here? How do we stop them?" Dr. Sampson's face was pale with fear, but her eyes were sharp. "We're not dealing with mere soldiers. These are something else. They were designed to protect the Ember and whatever force powers it is beyond our understanding. They'll stop us at all costs." Another blast rang out, and the ground beneath them cracked, forcing the team to scramble once more. The Guardians were relentless. Nothing was going to stop them from fulfilling their purpose. "We need to find another way to access the Ember," Owens muttered under her breath. "If we don't, we'll be stuck in this endless cycle, like the Guardians said." But as the last of the energy blasts landed near their position, the walls began to rumble again. This time, it wasn't just the Guardians moving, it was something else. Something far larger, deeper within the station, beginning to stir once more. "We're not alone down here," Owen said, her voice dark with realization. "And this is only the beginning." The ground continued to shake beneath their feet, and a low, ominous hum began to fill the chamber. It wasn't coming from the Guardians, but from something much deeper within the station, something ancient and unfathomable. The rumbling grew louder, reverberating through the walls, and a low growl, like the growl of some massive creature, echoed from the depths. "Get ready," Owen shouted, her eyes darting around the chamber. The Guardians hadn't let up. Their staffs crackled with lethal energy, and they advanced with calculated precision, forcing the team back. The crew's weapons were no match for their formidable armor, and every blast they fired seemed to be absorbed by the strange energy fields surrounding the Guardians. "We need to move," Dr. Sampson called out, fear creeping into her voice. "There's something else down here. The longer we stay, the worse it's going to get." Owens nodded grimly. "I don't care if we have to fight our way through, just stay together. Keep moving." The team made a hasty retreat down one of the side corridors, but the rumbling was getting worse, the floor cracking beneath their boots. They couldn't outrun the Guardians, not in these narrow passages. Their only chance was to get to the Ember, no matter what. As they rounded a corner, Owens motioned for them to stop. "This way," she said, pointing to a rusted access door at the end of the hall. "We'll use this to get below the station's main level. There's a chance we can bypass the Guardians if we take the lower tunnels." Ray's, ever the skeptic, frowned. "Are you sure? We don't know where those tunnels lead." "We don't have a choice," Owen said, her voice sharp. "It's the only option left." With no time to argue, Rice followed her lead, and the team quickly made their way toward the access door. The closer they got, the stronger the hum grew, vibrating through the walls like the heartbeat of a massive machine. And then, suddenly, it stopped. The silence that followed was suffocating. Not even the sound of the Guardians' heavy footsteps could be heard. It was as if the station had frozen in time. Owens reached the door, quickly accessing the manual override. The door groaned open with a heavy screech, revealing a narrow shaft that led deep below the station's surface. The air in the tunnel was thick with dust, and the faint glow of bioluminescent fungi clung to the walls, casting an eerie, sickly light on the surroundings. "We're going down," Owen said, taking a deep breath. "Stay alert. We don't know what's waiting for us down there." The team descended into the darkness, their flashlights casting long, jagged shadows on the walls. The further they went, the more oppressive the silence became. There was no sound except for the faint echo of their footsteps and the creaking of the metal around them. It felt like they were descending into the heart of the unknown, and with every step, Owens felt an increasing sense of dread. But they had no other choice. They couldn't turn back now. As they moved deeper into the station's bowels, the tunnel narrowed even further, forcing them to walk in single file. The air was growing colder, the temperature dropping rapidly, and the walls were lined with strange, organic patterns, as if the station itself had been grown, not built. "This place, it's not like anything I've ever seen," Dr. Sampson murmured, her voice filled with awe. "It's almost as if the station itself is alive." Owens didn't answer. She couldn't afford to be distracted by the bizarre architecture. They had to keep moving, but as they pressed on, an unsettling feeling crept over her. Something wasn't right. The air felt thick, as if it was pressing in on them from all sides. And then, as they reached a junction in the tunnel, they heard something, whispers. The sound was faint at first, like the rustling of dry leaves in the wind, but it quickly grew louder, more distinct. It wasn't human. It was a language, alien, guttural, and rhythmic, like a chant that seemed to resonate with the very walls around them. "This isn't just a station," Owen said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This place is a temple, a prison." The chanting grew louder, reverberating in the walls, and then, suddenly, the tunnel ahead of them erupted in a blinding light. The force of the explosion knocked Owens and her crew off their feet, sending them sprawling across the cold floor. The air crackled with energy, and as Owens struggled to rise, she saw what had caused the explosion, a massive figure emerging from the shadows. It was humanoid, but its features were grotesque, its skin a sickly green-gray, its eyes glowed with a malevolent red light, and its mouth was twisted into a cruel, toothy grin. It towered over them, at least twice the size of any human. "What the hell is that?" Reyes gasped, his voice full of disbelief. The creature growled, a guttural sound that reverberated through the tunnel. "You dare disturb the Ember's slumber." Before Owens could respond, the creature lunged, its powerful arms swinging toward them with terrifying speed. The creature's massive arm crashed into the tunnel wall beside Owens, sending sparks flying and debris scattering in all directions. The force of the blow shook the very foundation of the station, causing the walls to tremble. Owens barely had time to react, her instincts screaming at her to move. She ducked as the creature swung again, its fist missing by inches, but its presence overwhelming. "Get back," Owens shouted to her team, rolling to her feet and drawing her weapon. Her hand shook with adrenaline, but her aim remained steady as she fired at the creature. The shot splintered against its thick, armored hide with a sickening sound, leaving only a few sparks behind. It didn't even flinch. "This isn't working," Reyes yelled, firing beside her. "What the hell is this thing?" The creature's red eyes locked onto them, and its grin widened into something grotesque and cruel. It growled again, a deep, resonant sound that vibrated in their bones. "You should not have come here," it hissed. "The Ember is not for mortals. It will consume you all." Owen's mind raced. The creature wasn't just guarding the Ember, it was a part of it, perhaps even born from its power. They had underestimated what they were dealing with. The Ember wasn't just a source of energy. It was an anchor, a beacon, perhaps even a prison. "Move," Owens barked. She grabbed Dr. Sampson by the arm and pulled her back as the creature lunged again. The ground beneath them cracked as it stomped forward, sending the team scattering in different directions. Reyes was already sprinting toward the far side of the tunnel, his weapon firing wildly in an attempt to distract the creature. But it was no use. The creature was too fast, too strong. It moved with an unnatural, fluid grace that belied its massive size. As Owens continued to retreat, her eyes flicked toward the far end of the tunnel. There, barely visible through the swirling dust and debris, was a faint blue glow. The Ember. The creature wasn't just here to protect the Ember, it was here to stop them from reaching it, to keep them from understanding what it truly was. Without a word, Owens bolted toward the glow, her legs pumping as the creature roared behind her, its steps shaking the ground beneath her. She could hear it gaining, feel the hot breath of its fury on her neck. The tunnel seemed to stretch endlessly, but her focus remained sharp. She had to get to the Ember. It was their only hope. "Keep moving," she shouted to the others. "We need to reach the center chamber." Reyes had already made it ahead, his face a mask of determination as he pushed forward. Dr. Sampson followed closely, her eyes wide with fear and wonder. But Owens could see the resolve in her face. They all understood what was at stake now. The closer they got to the glowing light, the more oppressive the air became. The temperature dropped, and the hum of the station grew louder, like a heartbeat, echoing through their chests. They were nearing the source of the power, the heart of the Ember. Just as they reached the chamber's entrance, the creature's roar shook the walls behind them. "You cannot take it," it bellowed. "It belongs to the void." The team was in the chamber now, standing on the precipice of the unknown. Owens didn't hesitate. She turned, her gaze locking onto the pulsating orb in the center of the room. It floated on a pedestal, suspended in midair, surrounded by a network of glowing symbols and circuits that seemed to pulse with life. This was the Ember. It was both beautiful and terrifying, its energy radiating out like waves, distorting the air around it. Every part of Owens being screamed at her to stay away, but she fought the instinct. This was humanity's last chance. The Ember held the answers they sought, the answers to the future. Reyes raised his weapon. "We can't let it fall into the wrong hands," he said through gritted teeth. Owens hesitated, then nodded. "Agreed. We need to figure out how to harness it, how to use it against." Before she could finish, the ground trembled once again, and the creature appeared in the doorway, blocking their only exit. Its massive form seemed to grow, its eyes glowing brighter with rage. "You are fools," the creature hissed. "The Ember will destroy you. You cannot control it. No one has ever controlled it." "Maybe we don't need to control it," Owen said, her voice steady but her heart racing. "Maybe we just need to understand it." With one last roar, the creature lunged toward them, its massive hands reaching for the team. The battle for humanity's future was about to begin, and the Ember, whether as a weapon or a curse, would decide it all. The chamber shook violently as the creature's hand came crashing down toward them. In that moment, Owens could see the Ember's light flare, as if responding to the chaos unfolding around it. The energy in the room began to swirl, gathering like a storm. And then, in the chaos of that moment, everything went dark. The world was swallowed by an abyss of darkness. For a brief moment, it felt as though time had stopped. The rumbling, the growls, the frantic heartbeat of the station, all of it ceased. The only thing Owens could hear was the rush of her own breath as she fought against the crushing weight of fear and uncertainty. Her hand, instinctively, reached for her weapon, but it felt strangely heavy, as if the very air around her had thickened. The glow of the Ember pulsed, weak at first, but soon it grew, the faint light in the darkness becoming a searing flame. The creature's roar had stopped, and Owens slowly opened her eyes. What she saw made her heart race. The chamber was no longer the same. The walls, once covered in strange alien symbols, now pulsed with energy, as though the station itself had come alive. The air was crackling with raw power, and at the center of it all, the Ember was no longer just a source of light. It was a force in and of itself. A wave of energy radiated outward from it, sweeping across the room like a tidal wave. And then she realized what was happening. The Ember wasn't just a power source. It was alive. "Everyone, stay back," Owens shouted, though her voice was barely audible over the roar of the storm around them. "It's not just energy, it's ascension force." Reyes, still frozen from the shock of the moment, nodded, stepping back cautiously. Dr. Sampson's eyes were wide with a mixture of awe and horror. She understood what Owens was saying. The Ember wasn't something they could control. It was something they had to learn to coexist with. Suddenly, the creature reappeared, its hulking form outlined by the growing light. Its eyes glowed brighter now, almost as if in communication with the Ember. It was no longer just a guardian. It was a messenger, a connection between them and the power that they had discovered. "You still do not understand," the creature growled, its voice now resonating not just in the air but within their minds, as if speaking directly to their thoughts. "The Ember does not belong to your kind. It belongs to the Void, the force that governs all things. It has no master. It will consume you if you try to control it." "Then what do we do?" Owens demanded, feeling the pressure of the creature's words crushing down on her. "If we can't control it, then how can we survive?" The creature's grin widened, but this time it held a note of pity. "Survive? You think the Ember will kill you? No, it will change you. It will awaken the potential you do not yet know you possess." The words echoed in Owen's mind. The Ember wasn't just an energy source. It was a conduit to something far greater. Something older than anything humanity had ever imagined. A force that could either save them or destroy them, depending on how they approached it. For a moment, there was silence. The creature seemed to wait, watching them with its glowing red eyes. Then it spoke again, this time with a note of finality in its voice. "The Ember is not a gift or a curse. It is the final reckoning for all who seek it. Accept its power or perish trying." Owens took a step forward, her heart pounding. She could feel the pull of the Ember, its energy reaching out to her, calling to something deep within her, something primal. She could sense the lives of her crew behind her, their unwavering faith in her. In that moment, the weight of their future, and the future of humanity, rested on her shoulders. "All right," she said, her voice unwavering. "We'll accept it." The creature watched her for a long moment, as if testing her resolve. Then it stepped back, bowing its head in a gesture that almost seemed like respect. The light of the Ember surged once more, and Owens could feel its power enveloping her. It wasn't just energy, it was consciousness. A deep ancient knowledge flooded her mind, visions of distant worlds, forgotten histories, and the truths of the universe itself. It was overwhelming, and yet she could sense the guidance it offered. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the power settled. The storm in the chamber quieted, and Owens found herself standing alone before the Ember, the creature gone as if it had never existed. She looked back at her crew. They were shaken, but alive. And the Ember, its glow now steady and calm, seemed to pulse with approval. "We have it," Owens said, her voice full of awe. "We have a chance to rebuild, but it won't be easy. The Ember, it doesn't just give answers. It asks questions, and we will need to be ready to answer them." Ray stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "So what now?" "We rebuild," Owen said, her gaze fixed on the glowing orb. "But we do it with wisdom. We'll learn from it, understand it, and maybe, just maybe, we'll prove that humanity's greatest strength isn't in fighting for control, but in learning to coexist with the universe's most dangerous forces." The team stood together in silence, the power of the Ember their new guide. It was a flicker of hope in a universe that had almost forgotten how to hope. And with it, they would light the way for all of humanity.